All right, so we're going to do some photo bashing here in Krita. Now, just to preface this and warn everybody, Krita is not the best software for this. It actually takes a little bit of setup and configuration to get it working kind of the way you want it to go. Photoshop is actually a better software for it, but if you don't have Photoshop, you can certainly try doing it here in Krita. So what we're going to do is get a new image started, and usually working with larger image files for concepts and designs is preferable. That's going to be one of your biggest problems here in Krita. It actually is pretty slow in performance when it comes to bigger file sizes. So there's a few tricks you can get it to behave a little bit better. But we're going to do an 8,000 by 6,000 resolution image, 72 resolution pixels an inch anyways. RGB alpha 8-bit sRGB color, right? Okay, so we're just going to load this up like so. Now let's go to settings, configure Krita, and down here we'll find a couple settings we might want to play around with. So under performance, instant preview, you might want to go ahead and use instant preview on all of that. That could be useful. Display, if you're having issues with Direct3D, you could try OpenGL. That might be something you want to try as well. Now under general, when you paste an image in, you're going to want to paste it as attached sRGB bitmap more than likely, okay? So that's the one I personally use, but you could try the other ones if you want. Under miscellaneous, when you import a layer, you're going to want to import a layer and convert it to the image color space that you're using, RGB 8-bit, sRGB, right? Otherwise, you'll get like weird 16-bit layers, and then it just gets awkward. So do that. And I got my tools in the toolbar, but you could use a Docker, of course, which is the default behavior in Krita. If you set this, you just restart Krita and it'll update. All right. And I believe that is it for settings here. Okay, I don't think there's any more. All right, so just click OK, restart Krita if you need to. Now, up here under View, you can also turn on Instant Preview mode. This is quite useful. And so Instant Preview it'll calculate things later instead of while you're doing it, more or less. And so you're going to also need a lot of images. Of course, you can try to use things for Google or from Google, but you can't use it as an artwork later on. So like if you're planning on publishing in a book or anything like that, not going to be okay. You'd want to have image rights to whatever you're utilizing. There's packs of textures and images that you can buy out there, stock photos and things like that, that you can utilize for this. You can see I got a texture pack here that I've purchased with a bunch of aircraft parts in this one. And so if you're doing hard surface design specifically, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to look for things you want to basically snag and start creating more or less your kind of like kit, if you would. So you can insert as a new layer, just drag and drop it over here. If you got two monitors, that's nice. Otherwise, copy and paste it from your setup like this, right? Control C to copy. And then you could Control V here in Krita and paste it. Usually it's not working for some reason. Maybe it is working because it just froze. I don't understand what's going on right now. We'll try this again. Copy and get back to Krita and paste. There we go. All right. So that works too. Now, this is slightly canted and it's off. Krita doesn't have any real good like straightening tools, I would say. Not that I'm aware of anyways. So you just try to line it up the best you can if needed. I mean, it's going to be kind of just however it is, right? We have different tools we can use to make selections. So that's what we're going to go over first. We got like the square select, round select, and when you're using the circle select anyways, round select. You click and drag. If you hold shift, it locks aspect ratio. So this is the trick with this one. You hold shift and alt. You can move it. Don't let go of shift. You can switch to get shift and control. You can do from the center as well. So if you ever want to snag something in a particular area that's a circle, you can do that by just holding shift down the whole time and hit control and alt and using the different tools there, right? Moving it around, and it's a little bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. And I believe the square tool works the same way, the square selection. So yeah, same thing. Oh, it pivots apparently with control and alt will pivot it, right? So just control will do that. Control and alt rotates it. All right. Anyways, so there's a little combination of the three keys, shift, control, and alt. Try them out. and while left clicking and dragging. All right, if you need those, they're there. There's a polygonal selection tool as well, which is the straight lines like so. You can do that. Freehand lasso, freehand selection tool as they call it. You try to freehand things out real quick if you wanted to. Not a big deal. There's a contiguous selection tool, which I believe goes off tones, I think. But I'm, just play around with this one. If you want to add selections, by the way, you hold shift and click. If you want to subtract things, you alt click. All right. So just keep that in mind. So when you're using any of these, if it's like a box select, you select, alt click and drag, and shift click and drag. You see how this works out? We can do selections like this all day long. Add and subtract with any of them. It's also a color selection, which is nice. It'll select by like colors usually. In our case, it's supposed to have selected something, but I didn't see it select anything. Okay, I guess it select the whole image. Can't really see it right now, apparently. It's doing something in there. That's okay. There's also a curve selection tool. I don't know if you can edit the curve itself after the fact, where you do click, drag. You can do this all the way around if you wanted to get some cleaner kind of line selections, maybe. Click and drag. You can hold space bar, move, click, drag. All right, so this one actually works out pretty well once you get the hang of it. You're able to just make quicker selections that are a little bit cleaner than trying to freehand select them or whatever. All right, so you can do things like that. And select something out, copy it, paste it, right? So Control C, Control V, it'll go to a new layer. You can delete the original layer now, and you have a piece. And so you can use this later on during your creation of artworks if you wanted to, right? You can Control T or T to move those, and then it'll be on a new layer. Hold Shift while doing that. It'll stay in the aspect ratio that you want. So you can do this for all kinds of things. Just go crazy for like a day. Isolating things from images if you have enough images for it, right? So that contiguous selection tool, or the, what do they call that? The Bezier curve selection. I should have do. Anyways, Bezier curve selection tool. You can definitely get some work done with this on these kinds of shapes, right? I'm going to show you another kind of selection trick that's way more involved, but definitely useful. And it's going to let you select things that are more transparent, maybe like hair, things like that, perhaps. But we're not going to do it on hair, but we're going to do it on just a regular piece here in a second. So you can see I can pull that out, copy, paste, and then delete. Boom. Oop, don't turn that down. There you go. Okay, so you can see I missed something. That's why it's a big square right now. So you would want to select in this area and delete. And then next time you move it, yeah, that's what you're looking for there. Okay. You can resize these much smaller. This is a fairly large image, but you can leave them large if you want to. All right. We're going to pull in this one. It's just a painted handle on an aircraft or something. And so we could use the smooth selection, or the Bezier selection, should I say. But we're going to try something different. All right. And so what we're going to do is we need some kind of selection first. So we could start with the Bezier selection, or we could just try to freehand this all out real quick and get it close enough, maybe. That's always easier said than done. You can see it goes crazy, right? Hold Shift to add. You can go back and trim it up a bit if needed as well. All right, so it's just going to get you a little bit closer. And you can also hold Alt and subtract. For whatever reason, I can't hit that angle, but there you go. I'm trying to. Shift select through like so. And there we go. Now, it's not perfect. We want it maybe like perfect on this edge. And maybe we want a little blur to this edge as well. So here in Krita, if you go down to the bottom left, you click, we can see like a preview of our selection with the red masking. And so we can go under layer, or select, excuse me, go under select, show global selection mask. What this does, once you check this, you'll get a layer. That's a selection mask. You click on this, you can now edit it with a brush. So you can use the brush tool. You can use any brush you want. So if you want to use the airbrush, you can use the airbrush. You can knock out faint little selections like this, perhaps. Now, it's not to say you have to work this way. You could also use transparency masks among other things if you wanted. But this is just something you can't do, okay? And so you might use like a hard round brush, set the main color to white, press X, set the other color to black, and then you can X back and forth between black and white. And now one will select, one will deselect, right? So you can see how that works out. So we can go back, we can trim this up a little bit better and be a little bit more precise with it, especially if we're trying to do semi-transparent stuff like glass or hair. This could work out really well for you potentially. Unfortunately, Krita does not have a good blending mode, I think, for its doing like layer effects and things like that, like Photoshop would have for doing glass and whatnot. There's workarounds for it, but I didn't find them to be quite the same experience, so I'm not going to mention them, but brushing them out would probably be your better bet, in my opinion, but that's going to be something you might want to look into a little bit more, perhaps. So when we go around, you can see we can go right up to that edge, and we could definitely make that like a perfect selection all the way out if needed, using like a softer brush perhaps, or like a marker even. You see, like we can kind of fade the edges. So if you're doing like decals that need breakup and stuff like that, that could also possibly be a thing for you. It's just a little forewarning. If you're trying to use layer effects like drop shadows and stuff, the transparency can sometimes look pretty bad. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we do all of that. That's great. We have our selection. And now what do we do with this thing, right? Like we can copy it, we can paste it, no problem. Or we can hit Control-Shift-J. And this is actually going to be under the layer menu. There's new, cut selection to new layer, Control-Shift-J, right? So if we were to do that, Control-Shift-J, oh, we did the mask. Don't do the mask, right? Select the actual layer that we're working on, this one, and then hit Control-Shift-J. It will separate it as a new piece. We can delete the original, and there we go. So we have this going on now. We're able to work that out. So if you can do that Bezier tool, I mean, I would use that personally and go for it. You can do this rather rapidly on a lot of different stuff, and it works out quite well. Another side note, like you can do maybe the contiguous selection tool. You can select like just an arrow, hold shift, select the other arrow. You can do that number. You can do color selection, click. You'll see it tries to select all the light colors in here. You can hold shift and select with this as well. But you'll see sometimes you might not want to do certain selections. So once again, this is where using the tools here, going to the selection mask, hitting X using white. This might be a better bet for you. So if you want to do things like this and you go back and tweak them, go for it. All right. Definitely can get through it at some point or another. And you can see there's a lot of stuff in here I may not even want to select. So we'll use freehand selection tool. You can see we can alt click now or shift click. And maybe I want some of these cracks. Maybe I don't want these little guys here. We can start to isolate things rather easily. I kind of like this broken up stuff here at the bottom, but I don't want this big section out here. See how that works out? We'll do this one up here. This should be selected, I think, so we should be all right with that one. Let's see what we can just get rid of. All right, so now let's try it. Go to the layer, Control-Shift-J, boom. Delete the original. Press Control, I think it's Control-D. I set deselect all to the A key. So you want to deselect all basically, which will be up here. You can see deselect is A for myself, but it should probably Control-D or something, Shift-D for you guys. Select all is still going to be Control-A. Right, but anyways, we got another piece done now, and it probably doesn't need to be that big, but yeah, there you go. Now, let's just talk about actual photo bashing for a second. So a lot of times, the trick with this is that you're still going to do you're still going to do like thumbnails and stuff. You're not going to get away from this. It's still going to be here. So if you want to use like a hard round brush for this, it's probably better than using the transparent stuff. So if you're doing hard surface stuff like this, this is going to be a little bit better of an experience, perhaps. Doing some kind of like mech or something like this is body parts, whatever the case, right? So you're going to want to do your silhouettes. You're also going to want to find, if possible, some generic textures of paneling and things like that. So maybe I'll use this green one. And you want to just use like big texture sections sometimes like this. Because what you can do is you can take the little drawing we just did, we can hit Control G on both of those. It's going to create a group. And so as soon as we take this layer and we do an alpha lock, it's going to use this bottom one as a mask. And so we can do that real quick to get something going. It's quite useful. It's also useful to do a layer above it, maybe, and alpha lock this one as well. And go back over this with like the square tip marker and use different colors of gray to just get some shading going. Any kind of shading will do here for the most part, just to get it going. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to overlay the other layer here on top of it. You see? And so now we can actually control that shading rather fast as well. So even though you're photo bashing, it doesn't give you like an excuse to just ignore all your art rules, basically, which is the main thing. You're still going to do some artwork. Just remember, the more you brush, more than likely, the less realistic it would look. So if you're going for more photorealistic stuff, you will definitely want to try to do less brush work and start using actual images and doing more image editing, basically. So that's really the trick about photo bashing, is it's actually a mix between art and image editing. It's like doing digital collage. It's quite fun. So there's a lot of other stuff that can come into play with this as well. You have tons of filters, which we're not going to go over in this video, but you have tons of different filters and blending modes and effects. So all your stuff that you would normally use, like sharpen, unsharpen, blur, you can do like high pass filters under edge detection. There's Gaussian high pass, which is useful edge detection. All this stuff in here, guys. You can use all of this to create whatever you want. Just play around with this kind of stuff little by little, like curve editors, levels, hue, saturation, value adjustments, and whatever the case in there, right? Krita also has filter layers, right? These are non-destructive layers where you can do adjustments as well, where you can do pretty much the same things. Like here's Gaussian blur, lens blur, motion blur. Okay. Those work as well. They're pretty slow in performance sometimes when they start adding up, but it's all there for you, okay? So however you want to do the artwork yourself by the end of this process, that's up to you, okay? I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you everything you need to do. But establishing some kind of a base like this is really fast. Just a couple strokes, you're already off to the start on this thing, right? Once you understand a little bit of rendering, soft round brush will be your best friend. It is literally the way to go on a lot of stuff because you just lightly use it where needed. Even turn the opacity down real low on it, and you can kind of do it in a bunch of little strips, perhaps. Create your sub shapes here on this. And do a little bit of rendering, but not as much as you normally would. That's the main thing, right? Because the photos, of course, are going to take care of a lot of that. So if you want to do that, you want to do a little highlight in here. And this is getting into that rendering part where, if you're trying to work for speed, you can draw these things like this very fast. Use the line tool, hold V while using a tool, and it'll use the line tool, right? You can do this all day long, no problems. The main thing about the PhotoBash section, though, and I highly recommend doing like a whole sheet of this stuff. I'm going to talk about this real quick. Like these little layers here, right? All these different layers we had broke out. We can take these, we can group them, Control G, and we could say, we'll just call this our bash set or whatever. This here, let's say we were to go to another document and we wanted all of these to come with us. So the idea is that you save out a whole sheet of just stuff you've made, like hundreds of objects that you've isolated. You go to a new sheet later on and you want those over in your new project. All you do is load up the file, take the group, don't select every layer, just the group, copy this layer, okay? You go to your new document, you Control V, you paste it in, that's it. And now what you're able to do is you can photo bash with those freely, not worry about messing up your original separated items, and you won't have to worry about destroying anything by accident, basically. You can always load it back in if you screwed something up, right? So that's the idea of that. That can happen, right? Now, but we're not doing that. So we want to select these things one by one and maybe copy them and pull them over. So you can use the R key to select different layers. You just hold R, select something you want to use, and click. Okay, you'll see it selects that layer. If they're not multiple layers stacked on top of each other, this goes pretty easily. It's not a big deal to use the R key and click, right? So R key, click, select it, press T, use the transform perhaps. But before we go crazy with this, we want to duplicate it. So I'm going to hit Control J. That duplicates it. Now I can move that duplicate out. I'm going to put it up to the top real quick. And you can see here, I can Control T, move it around, scale it down, contort it, distort it, whatever I want to do here. So we can transform it. The transform's a little weird here in Krita. First, you're going to do your transform, rotate it or whatever, then press enter, then hit Control T again, or select it, hit T, Control T. And now we can do like different things like warps, cage, mesh, liquefy, perspectives, whatever you want. So we're going to try a warp here, see how this works out. You can see warp behaves kind of in one manner, which I'm not a big fan of sometimes. So if it doesn't work out, you can right click and you could try a different one, but it's going to reset the shape basically. So we can do like mesh, for example. And I think mesh usually works out fairly well. So we'll play around with mesh real quick. Kind of contort it up if we needed to. All right. Hey, and if you don't like the way this is looking, use mask. All right. You don't have to always destructively destroy these even further. You could right click, or you can click this little arrow down here, little icon, and add a transparency mask. So now you're just going to have a black and white image here, transparency mask. So it's the same process. X, you can use white. X, you can use black. And now you can go through and, of course, we won't use that tool. We'll use a marker. We could press X, use black, and we can start to do this number and further refine this even if we wanted to. Basically doing this. Okay. So maybe you do want it to run all the way to the back right there. And of course you could do that number. You see we went over the side here a little bit of the base image. Maybe we wanted to keep all that on the base image. This whole section here, this layer, we could throw it into this group as well and put it at the top of the stack and alpha lock it. You see? So we can do that for everything in here pretty much. We can alpha lock them. Not a big deal. And then, you know, if you want to do like a little bit of a paint over as well, you can do this. And then now you can go ahead and work this into place as well. So if you want to do that little bit of a paint over, you want to run this into here, be a little bit more green perhaps. That's a possibility, right? And maybe blur it a little or delete some of it, whatever the case. But you can see we won't go outside the shape again, right? Now this may be the wrong color as well. So like color matching, you could try to do that, or you could try to do things like overlays as well. There's nothing wrong with using the different blend modes here. You can see multiply works out really well if we wanted to just go with that. There's tons of different blend modes in Krita. There's like a ridiculous amount of them actually. So you can always play around with those blend modes, right? Just wanted to open some of these up and I accidentally clicked on them, but yeah, so there's like mixes, there's like Photoshop equivalents of mixes. It just goes on and on forever and a day. So we're not going to go through all those, obviously. You'll have to play around with them. And you can also add ones to favorites and whatnot. So, but yeah, you can see where this is going now, right? We're clearly able to go through this, click on things, hit T, Control J, move it down, reorder it. Yeah, so photo bashing can be extremely quick. And when you have better selection of stuff than what I have right now, you want to do maybe like whole vehicles, parts of vehicles. You might like want a whole set of different tires or tank tracks or treads or whatever the case. Cannons and guns and all kinds of other fun stuff. You can start putting all those together. You can even try to pre-color match the kit bash stuff you're going to use. You could try to color match it a little bit so it's not so dramatic where it feels like you're getting like a thrift store variety of images tossed together. You could definitely do that. So go through and do a little bit of like tone and color matching, perhaps. You might get a better result out of it even then. But you don't, make things are unique still. Don't get it all uniform. In our case, I don't know if this is going to blend well in here because of the background shading. But there's always a possibility you do things like this. You know, you add another transparency mask. You don't overthink it. You put it in that group. So you can put groups within groups, by the way. So if we wanted, I'm going to show you that here in just a sec. We'll just go with the transparency mask for this one right now. We'll just knock that out. We should alpha lock it. That would help that out even more. So we could just start kind of creating what we need here. You can see, you might want to blend these things very carefully in some areas and work into the crevices. This is the part of like photo bashing / illustration, photo editing, all that fun stuff comes together, right? Now, let's say we're doing another silhouette sometime. This is our base object. Think of it like that. This group that we've been working in, which also apparently has something way out here. I don't know where it is, but we'll have to get rid of that somehow. Probably later on, to be honest. But anyways, our base group, you can think of this as like your object that you're making or whatever. Okay. And if you wanted to do like a sub object, you do a new layer. But you want it locked inside of this area, but it's going to be like a silhouette still, right? So maybe you do like a little speaker box in here or something that you want to create. So we're going to create another clipping group, basically. These are called clipping groups, by the way, when you have all these layers doing this kind of stuff with the alpha lock or whatever. So if I hit Control G, it creates a group here. If I hit the plus sign, I can now, you know, paint in this area, and I can alpha lock it to that shape, right? But when I move this group, obviously it goes outside. You have to alpha lock the group. Okay. So if you want to go on outside, you can unlock it if you want it inside. So the layers can get really crazy, right? If you wanted to. We don't necessarily have to use that paint layer either. Like we could just come over here and say like, we're going to use this guy now. And just duplicate it. That was what happens with my keys, I guess. Okay. So that's a tool I have that. Anyways, we're going to put that up here now. Place it where needed. We can alpha lock it. You see? And then we can kind of just like pick what we want to happen here, right? Maybe we want a little wire in the corner. Maybe we want a little bit of that roundness. Maybe we want to Control T and scale it a little or rotate it or whatever the case here, right? We can play around with this shape all day long and just come up with different kind of cool results or whatever and do things like that. So there, now we got a different kind of color going on. It's inside here and we can alpha lock the whole group if needed. Not a big deal. We could take the original layer on the bottom and now we can start to add additional elements as needed where needed, basically. So if we want to do like this area, you know, we want to cut it to here. You see this one we will have to match, unfortunately, in this case. But we can do that. Now, the only problem with this, I believe, is that you don't get to blend everything quite the way you would want. Okay. So that might still be a little bit of an issue for some of you. It's a little caveats to a lot of the stuff we've been playing with. Like it will either work really good or it doesn't work quite right a lot of times. So it's one of those things with this setup. But so if we try like any kind of blend mode, let's say with the group, right? We try to blend the whole group with an overlay. Oh, it actually works. Okay, never mind. It does work. Last I recalled, it didn't work. So I was debating whether I was going to even show this, but yeah, see, we can do that. And we could try different colors, tones, desaturating it, whatever we want to get different kind of results out of it, perhaps. This one, if we blend it, nothing's going to happen because there's nothing there. There's no shading above this one. So we'll alpha lock it. A new layer, alpha lock it, and then start shading, right? And it should be working. But I'm not sure what I just did to make it not work. Let's delete it a second. Create new layer, alpha lock. Oh, we don't have it set to multiply, maybe. Yeah. That's one. There you go. And so you can also, you know, do this to maybe fix color a little bit and add shadows and all kinds of other nonsense you can do with this, really. It's like we wanted a little bit more darker of a tone and then the light in some areas, but not all the areas, perhaps. Right? There's so many ways of working with images. It's ridiculous. It's like there's so many little cool tricks and techniques. It's gonna take a little while to get used to doing a bunch of them. I'm gonna use the airbrush now, for example, to kind of brighten everything down here a little more. Use black and maybe try to make that look like it is underneath there. You see? It fades back into there. Use white again. The airbrush is set very low opacity right now, so that's why it's very soft. You got to pick up your brush multiple times and use it, basically. Right. So if you really want to go to the extremes and do amazing artwork, you can. There's nothing that says you have to do any of this like crazy additional like blending and shading and all that. Like if you want to just throw images together and create a concept off just that stuff, doing like masks and like super quick work, you absolutely can. But you can create really nice artworks as well, photobashing, obviously. There's tons of videos out there online of guys just spending, hours photobashing like whole scenes and sets together and all kinds of other fun stuff. And it definitely works out. It looks really good. Create a layer on top of it as well. You can always go back and kind of line things up maybe if you wanted to, or once again, use an airbrush or whatever. And just try to shade things where you think it would be appropriate. And start to illustrate it more or less is what you're doing. You can see like, you may not even need to have a blend mode. You can just match colors and add colors and do all kinds of fun stuff. The part of my channel that I have not shown anybody is the photo bashing part, right? So I've been wanting to do this video for a while, but it's kind of involved. It's it can be really fast, but like if you're trying to do just pure concept all the time, like coming up with like a lot of different ideas, like I was saying earlier, you might want to utilize larger images of things so you're not doing as much custom work. But the custom work can be really good too. Like you definitely want to make things unique and original and just play around with, the soft round brushes and textured brushes and not doing some actual artwork on top of this. You can see we can also, if we really want to, we could throw that in that group and decides to go wherever it wants. Let's go back up here. You can alpha lock this one as well inside the group. You can see it's just going to get rid of the edges basically at that point, but it's all still there. It's like taking place, right? So this just allows you to creep into these kind of areas a little bit nicer, perhaps, with the shading tools here. You could add rim lighting and all that other fun stuff. The silhouette isn't working for me here, so that very base layer, you still can adjust this, guys. You can go back to that very base layer, the mask basically, and you could use like, say, white or black, or excuse me, this one, not white or black. It's going to be, in our case, black, and E to erase. So you have transparent pixels on that. It's not a transparency mask, so it behaves a little bit different. You can also use different tools as well. So if you can see, if I go through here and I do this, I can change the shape slightly. And now we can really start to key in on design of that silhouette and make sure it's absolutely perfect. Might be nicer to kind of do this a little bit before you get started, to really think about like, how you're going to lay things out and how they're going to, what kind of shapes they're going to form and create. But you can always go back after the fact and just tweak it and adjust it, basically. That's the main thing, right? You can say like, this meeting right here directly at the bottom in this area, maybe we don't want that effect, maybe go back. A sharper brush will usually work out better in a lot of sense because it gives you like a sound, like super focused design. And then you can use like blurs later on to make things fade in and out of the background and whatnot. As opposed to trying to do like transparent pixels. But, if you want to do transparency, do transparency. There's nothing wrong with that either. It's just sometimes it's harder to work it into another image. And if you're going to do things like t-shirts out of your designs, you'll have to do what's called half toning. And half toning is, it's not that hard, really. You can do it in Krita. I was playing around with it. You can do it in pretty much any software, I think, that's for graphic design. But I think the one in Krita would work. I'm not for sure. I haven't done like a print with it or anything, but I'm pretty sure it looks like proper halftoning. But I would have to do another video on that anyways, so I'm not going to talk more about that in this one anyways. Right. But yeah, this is the process, guys. So you go through this, you have fun. The good thing is once you get enough stuff going on, like you can start to, you can add your own color palettes to this, your own grays, your own whatever. You can do paint overs all day. If you want to do things like that, use soft round brushes, you can do that still. And we can work up ideas in little areas and chunks. We can just go straight to shading with some of these perhaps, right? And start adding lighting effects or whatever else we might need later on. You can see that worked out there. So now we can go through and do this. So yeah, not the fastest always. Can slow down quite a bit, but it's fun. That's the main thing. It's fun. I really want this to be darker in here all the way through. Let's try doing that even down the middle again. Little highlight here. If you use pure white and you're using opacity, usually it works out fine, but usually an off light yellow with direct sunlight works well. And you can also do like, depending on the scene, you can also do like light blues. You can also do this all in gray, in like black and white, and then color things later with like a specific coloring technique. So that way you can get variations of day and night if you needed to a little bit faster for your shading and everything. You also want to add shadows, blah, blah, so forth. So I'm just going to do a little bit of edge wear here on this, just kind of thumbing it in. You use a really small brush. You can add like little corners like this, perhaps. This is what's fun. You can always add manual drop shadow. Most people don't realize that. So on like little things like this, you can add up broken little edges. And that's going to sell you the illusion of the drop shadow. We'll use yellow in this case. But see, now we can do just these little faint setups like that, right? Now, the one thing I did miss, we're not going to do any more on this one, was the vector layers. So I want to talk about vector layers real quick, because if you want to, or vector shapes even, it's a Bezier curve tool, or I think this one as well can maybe work. But Bezier curve tool usually, and you want to create a new layer. Clicking this drop down here, you want to create a new vector layer or shift insert, right? And we could use like say black. This is going to be the same as using that other Bezier tool down here, sorta. We can click, we can drag, we can click, we can drag, we can click, we can drag. And you can see it's going a little bit crazy. Don't worry about that because we can go back up here. You'll notice we have a select shapes tool and we also have a edit shapes tool. So we can select a shape, move it around, do whatever. We can edit shape, click this. We can grab these now and we see we have handles. We can drag the handles around, do this number. And these little points, most of the stuff you need to control them, you right click on it, you have it mostly right here. So like if you want to make this a smooth point, click smooth, right? This is going to be smoothed out, right? We click and drag now, it'll stay smooth. If we want to make it a corner point, we can do that. That's going to be a square. So you see they're changing shapes. Circles are smooth, squares, corner points, and a symmetric point is also going to be a square. But basically it's a little bit different. You can see it's symmetrical. And so smooth point is not, right? But it's basically the same idea. So if we want to just grab all of these, we can click and drag. Right click on one. We can make these all smooth points for now. We can adjust our handles. This is an excellent, excellent way of establishing your base shapes. It's a little bit slower in nature, but it's much cleaner usually. And so here's the thing about this. Once again, it's going to behave just like the base layer there. You can hit Control G, you can add to it. This is now a base layer, right? So if we do a layer on top, we go through the same process basically. We alpha lock it. This is what I was referring to as a clipping group. When you group something, you have the base layer and then an alpha lock on top of it. It's a clipping group. Okay. We can do like some shading real quick. This is how you do, on the paint layer. This is how you do vehicle renders and product design renders a lot of times. The illustrations form anyways, is you do things like this. You could do this in Affinity Designer even with all procedural tools technically, or mostly using procedural tools. So it's all non-destructive. This works really well here in Krita, though. It's actually not that bad. So we can make, we can do our shading basically, or whatever the case. Let's say we ever wanted to adjust this this vector here. We can go back to it, and we can use the node tools, and we can click and add points perhaps in these areas. Whoops, if it'll let me. Okay, you should be able to like double tap in there. It should add them, I think. Oh, maybe it's not. If you right click, you should be able to insert a point then. There you go. It's one way or another we're going to get there. Now, so we could adjust this shape and tweak it further. Or we can create a layer on top of it that's not alpha locked. We can go to our brush tool and we can combo these all together. So if we want to add more additional segment stuff here, we can do that, right? So we can mix the raster with the vector. So vector, of course, is mathematically based. Raster is going to be all the pixels, basically, more or less. And so that's what we can do anyways. It's kind of interesting, I thought. And this also will, of course, allow you to, of course, if you needed to take this base shape here, you just wanted to fade it out on the top for some reason, this will be super useful because you'll be able to hit E, use the eraser, and just start to fade it out. And you're probably thinking like, well, when would I ever actually use something like that? You might not do it on the edges of shapes as much, unless you're trying to blend certain things together, like not on like the base shape anyways. So you might not use that there as much, but you will likely use it when you're doing certain kinds of features like wings and they have to blend one form into another. You see, like we could do selections like this all day long, right? And we might create like a, we'll just use a fill tool, press F, use black, we'll fill it, okay? If it'll let us. Why is it not letting us fill? Oh, because the opacity's down. All right, fill it with the opacity up. I don't know why they do that either. Like they should have the fill tool be separate from the brush. Anyways, but we fill it, right? We put this above our shading. Now we got another shape. And so we can hit Control G. We're going to create another clipping group in here. And we're going to do a layer on top, alpha lock it, airbrush. And you see, like we can start doing things like this, but now that base layer, we can press E, use the eraser, make it smaller using the airbrush. We can fade these into each other like this. And now you're starting to see where that transparency comes into play, right? So you can do these blends in and out from one shape to another shape. You just want to be very careful with it, of course. But it is very possible to do that. And you can see the transitions are a little bit rough sometimes. Like when we look at this here, you can always do a layer on top. You can still alpha lock it if you wanted to, or you can go outside the group maybe. Right? So this group, by the way, if we go to the border, it does that. So if you group alpha lock, boom, right? Just a reminder. But let's say we want this up here, and we're doing this number. We do a paint layer on top. Maybe we alpha lock the whole group. Fine. Paint layer on top is your paint over layer usually. And that means you can go back through here and you can kind of dust these edges if you wanted to with a little bit of a lightening effect and darkening effect even, so that you're blurring the edge more or less or rounding it out. Something like that anyways. So you can definitely do that all day long. You can see that works out quite well. As far as keeping your brush strokes nice and smooth, I use a program called Lazy Nizumi. It's really great. It works with Photoshop. It has a plugin for Photoshop. Here in Krita, I usually just use it mostly for the brush smoothing, so I can just toggle either using a lot of smoothing or a little bit of smoothing rather easily. Not to say that the brush smoothing in Krita is bad or anything. It's just a preference. But yeah, we can absolutely do paint overs on stuff like this and blend it as best as we can and do numbers like that. Now, last note here, and we're going to end the video. There's a few tools that you want to just be aware of, like what they do. So first, we're going to go to this layer here. Okay. The blur smudge tool, the little Q-tip looking one, right? Cotton swab for the ears or whatever. This thing. Set the opacity rather low. Use pen pressure sensitivity with your pen. I'm using a pen for everything, of course. This will tend to blur now more than it will smudge. Okay, it still smudges a little bit, but it blurs more. This one's really useful to just get blurs going. So when you have like really chunky kind of stuff going on like this, that was the whole idea. You can smooth it down a little bit if you want it just a little bit softer. Low opacity is the trick with that one, okay? Um, Low opacity on the airbrush also works out fairly well. And we'll go over, let's see, what was the other one? Oh, it's not even in here. I knew I was going to almost forget this one. I almost forgot it. But using any kind of brush, by the way, this isn't what we're going to talk about, but any kind of brush with texture works good with the photo bashing, usually. Okay. But what we need to know is how to use clone stamp tool, right? It's super useful for photos. We have other ones that are useful as well, like burn and dodge and some of this stuff in here. But we're looking for the clone stamp version, which is going to be, I guess not there, maybe. No, it's down here. The heal and brush tool, clone stamp. It's the same one, basically. So when we select this brush, we right click. Usually this menu's hidden, open it up. You'll find there's a section to turn healing on and off. So healing's great in most programs. Here in Krita, it's a little bit different. We might have to control click to do a sample somewhere. And then we can go over an area. Oh, make sure we're on the right layer. Control click, sample, go over the area. And for the most part, you can erase details rather easily. So if you want to try to recover this texture, you can do this with a soft round brush even, right? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with this tool. It works really good. I need to favorite it actually here in Krita. But beyond that, when you right click, you turn healing off. It's now a stamp tool. So if we do that same thing, you'll see that it just takes the texture from here and transfers it over to there. Super useful. But when you're on really grungy stuff sometimes, this is too smooth. Like this area, we might not be too bad with this one. Like we can kind of use it, and you want to do multiple samples in areas. And you'll be able to sample and kind of get some interest in this area that doesn't look like it's been repeated. You're taking the textures from here and moving them up there, basically, right? And so this is with the soft round tip that it comes with by default. So we go to this setting here. You can see this is its default setting. You might want to try changing it to a brush tip that's predefined. And a lot of times I think if you're going to do rougher things, like you can use any of these really if you wanted to. But rock pitted seems to work really well, which is, see if I can remember which one it was. Maybe something like this one or like this one. Some of these might work out quite well for you. But rock pitted is in here somewhere. I will never probably find it unless I just selected it. Chalk chisel. Right, yeah. I swear I remember where it was. It was like right here on the side. So I've shown it in previous videos. Even there it is, right there. Rock pitted. It's hard to find that one sometimes, I guess. All right, so we got that out of the way. The reason why this one is so good is if I start using it, you see how it comes in. It's pretty consistent as far as like texture goes. It's just like noise, a little bit of noise. And that's great for breakup, in my opinion. If you turn the opacity down on this, you do your samples and you start using this, very easy to add little minor effects in here doing this. It's a very nice tip. And it doesn't look like it's repeating. So that's the main thing. Like it can sometimes look repetitive, but it doesn't as much as some of the others, perhaps. And that's the main thing. Like some of these other ones are also very good. You might want to create your own alphas as well. And if you want to try to take this a step further, you might be able to turn on textures down here. So you turn on some textures and there's like some rock textures and other stuff. And so that'll mix into your setup here as well. You see, you can accidentally start cloning things here like this possibly. So you see how it kind of blends together nice though. It's not too bad. All right, so there's some options for you with that tool. If you ever got to make something seamless, you're working on just pure texture later on. Let me do a new file real quick. No, not a file there, a new file. Open a new document. There you go. If you ever got to make seamless textures, it probably would be helpful just to scale them or crop them real quick. So you could do like crops maybe. Tool options, you'll see your crop settings up here. So you might want to create an even amount here of like whatever 2000, whatever. So copy and paste that, crop it as needed, and prep these maybe for like seamless textures. Okay, I didn't hit enter, I guess. Let's try that again. paste that value already. That's in there. Or you can just change the aspect ratio to 1. Crop it. Nope, not crop twice. Nope. Have some trouble with this one apparently. All right, let's try it one more time. We'll just change it to 1. Come back out here and just crop. There you go. There. So we got there's a little bit of a back and forth with the tool up there apparently. Anyways, so once you crop, it's cropped. If you want to make them seamless, you use a seamless feature. And now you can use that the healing brush tool there. If you want to just turn healing back on, and you can still use the alphas with the healing tool as well, if you wanted to. I think at least turn the opacity back up. Yeah, see, it does work. It's just a little. It's not as abrupt now. Let's do pattern off. I think that's causing the most problem. I don't think the alpha is as big of a deal. Yeah. Oh, that was looking good. What happened there? It just disappears. Oh, that's sad. Anyways, so let's reset the brush. Anytime you want to reset a brush, you just reset here. All right. Let's try that with reset and see if it works. It might just be because we're using it with the seamless setup here. I was hoping that it was just like the fast preview not updating, but yeah, it might be the actual seamless stuff going on here, or it's because it's on the border and the edge. Or something else is going on because it's not working on any of this now. That's bizarre. All right, let's just use clone stamp. Oh, it's using clone stamp right now. Huh. What is going on here? I'm not going to say that's a bug just yet, but it might be a bug. That's what it's looking like. So after cropping it, I guess we're having issues. Huh. I didn't used to have issues with this. Why is it having issues now? That's usually what you run into. Just random stuff happens. But let's turn instant preview off for a second. Okay, it's not working with instant preview. So that must be a bug, is what it looks like. All right. So when we go back to the tool, we set it to healing. Click. Yeah, healing still doesn't seem to want to work right either. So that's a goofy bug. All right. Now we know about it. We'll turn healing off. Usually I use clone stamp for this, but turn that opacity back down. Maybe not that low. Do a little bit more nearby it. There you go. So now we're getting there. We're starting to make this happen. Let's see if it still messes up with the brush tip change. And we'll end the video after this for sure. This one looks very repetitive usually, or just not quite right anyways. Turn opacity back up, you see. Actually, it's not too bad looking. When we zoom in, it might be worse. It might always be the thing happening, but yeah, it's not too bad. It's pretty noisy. It's nice. I like it. Looks about right. Yeah, so you can blend the colors, have fun, go to town. It's really, this is as good as it gets in Krita, I think. When you start trying to do certain things like bricks like this, it gets a little out of control because there's no great alignment tools. So just be careful with the tiles. You'll want to work them very carefully if you're going to do tiling stuff like that. But yeah, you can make seamless textures. You can get rid of stuff, logos, patterns, stuff like that. Not a big issue. We'll just kind of flush this together. You see how like we're getting like this repetitiveness in that area? That's always going to be what you face the most, I think, a lot of times when you're working on textures themselves. But the whole reason I wanted to go over this at the last minute here is because a lot of times you take these and you might use them in your images as well. So if you need like a bigger panel, right, you would just paste these next to each other. And another thing that's a little bit of an issue with Krita is there's no good like alignment for the snapping of these things together. So you just have to use the arrow keys, kind of get them close enough, make sure that there's no seams in them. And then if you had a perfectly seamless texture, you can make bigger panels, basically bigger textures rather fast that way. That's a potential, right? You can also maybe set these up as some kind of fill layer. I haven't really tried that out, but it's definitely something you can look into at least, right? And that's good because now, you select something like this, and you group them together. Just throw them in a group with each other. We'll alpha lock that one to that one. You can see we can definitely come over here and just straight up start multiplying that. So if we needed a similar color, we can drop the opacity a bit, raise it. We can take this layer, we can do filters, adjust hue and saturation and value, change the saturation down, lightness up, saturation up, change the color. I think you get where this is going now. We can start to do all kinds of just really cool stuff, basically, with these images, right? So we can make all kinds of tweaks and adjustments, use curves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You want to collapse these two here, this group. You can select all that, and you should be able to just select it all and hit Control E, and it, maybe, I don't know. Merge group, boom. Yeah, it should be Control E. I don't know why it's not merging now. Krita, no, you should merge. Anyways, if it doesn't do that, what I would do is I would edit and copy. Oh, you know what? Copying it won't work either. Oh, Control E worked that time. I guess you can't select multiple. You can only select a group. All right, so you select the top of the group. We'll set this back to the overlay or multiply or whatever. Multiply will remove your highlights, just so you know. And Control E the group. Yeah, there you go. That's what we're looking for. And then at the very end of this whole process, don't forget you can try layer styles or layer effects. All right, layer style here on this drop down, or right click your layer, and you can go ahead and try doing things like drop shadows or bevels and emboss. These can be a little bit goofy. They tend to be a little bit slow here in Krita, unfortunately, but you try soften, maybe like play around with these settings, pillow emboss, just see kind of what they're doing here. And, we can do like up or downs and softens and sizes we can change around as well. So a lot of cool stuff in here that play around with screen. You can change blend modes on those. So on and so forth, which I would be careful using those because they do get really slow. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Use them sparingly. If here in Krita anyways. In Photoshop, you can go crazy. Affinity Photo, you can go crazy with them for the most part, but that needs a performance update for sure. But overall, yeah, you could do this, guys. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Very long video. There was a lot to go over, but that's the nature of illustration in general. Like at the end of the day, you might be doing concepts. It still might be very fast, but it's still technically illustration. If you're going to go for shading and materials and all that fun stuff, right? You're still illustrating something. It just it might not be like a full on art piece with a great composition as far as like the whole image goes. And it might just be individual elements of things you're creating or whatever, mechanical designs especially, right? And don't forget, you can sketch first. Sketch or thumbnail or use silhouettes. Don't think that you're stuck using just the tools this way. Like it's all there for you to use at any point to artistically create, and feel free about it. It's digital collage. That's what it is, right? And so, anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and also comment down below what you thought of this one. Maybe we can do some like time-lapse projects and get more into the idea of creating the artworks and not just the using the tools here on these kinds of projects and things into the future. All right. So I'll check you out then. Take care.